Hello and welcome to this video review of online mastering at Abbey Road Studios. This is actually the second of two videos, as I've already posted my review of the online mixing process with Abbey Road, which was very positive indeed. But before we start, I should briefly explain what mastering is and why it's important. The mastering process makes your tracks sound their best by making the music as loud as possible so that it doesn't sound quiet compared to other songs. It also increases fidelity so you can hear the individual instruments better, and it tweaks the EQ to make your song sound good across multiple devices, from small phone speakers through to headphones and top-of-the-range hi-fi systems. As mastering technology has improved, many older songs and albums have been remastered in modern years to make them sound good compared to modern music. So a good master is really important, and you can now have a professional mastering engineer at Abbey Road Studios master your music for you remotely for a fee. It's quite a hefty fee, I must say, just over £1,500 for my 8-song album in the formats that I needed, which we'll cover shortly. However, you can also use far cheaper online mastering services for a fraction of the price, so I will actually be comparing one such service with Abbey Road's mastering later in this very video. Now, actually setting up your album for mastering at Abbey Road is really easy, as you just use the online portal on the Abbey Road website to submit your unlimited WAV files. By unlimited, I mean that they've not been normalized or boosted to be loud using a limiter. This is because your songs need headroom. The WAV files need to be about 7 decibels down from the 0 dB line in order for the limiter and the booster to work properly in the mastering process. Of course, my tracks were mixed at Abbey Road by Paul Pritchard, who I say did a fantastic job, and after we had agreed on the final mix, he then sent me the unlimited files for one final check, and then I uploaded them to the mastering portal. I then chose a mastering engineer, namely Jeff Pesh, who mastered Pulp's classic album Different Class back in the 90s, as well as what is reported as being the most played radio song of all time, namely Kylie's Can't Get You Out of My Head. Now, of course, I appreciate that Kylie and I are in totally different genres because I'm in rock music and she's not really, but the whole point of this exercise was to make my music as radio-friendly as possible. And since Jeff has a great many years' experience of mastering successful music, I thought that would be fine to go with him. And after all, any professional mastering engineer should be able to make a good mix sound great. Well, Jeff got the first masters to me in double quick time. In fact, I wondered how it was done quite so quickly. He emailed me around 1 o'clock in the afternoon asking for my full rough mix of my album and also the individual track examples that I'd made to show where I wanted crossfades to go and where each track should start and stop. So I don't know if he'd already done some mastering at this point, maybe he had, but I replied when I saw the email about 2:30, and by 5 PM he had emailed to say that he would put the files on the site for me to check. And then when it was all cleared, he would do the various file formats that I'd asked for. Well, that all happened very quickly, as I was actually able to listen to the files for checking that same evening. So it was all done in a day, first time round. I had paid for 24-bit masters, also 16-bit masters optimized for streaming, CD master files, FLAC, and separately Apple Digital Masters, which is the modern equivalent of mastered for iTunes. So I listened to the first mastered versions, and I was amazed to discover what I heard as some distortion and clipping. I made a long list of the things that I could hear that I thought were wrong, and I sent it back to Jeff. I was surprised when he came back to me and said that the tracks were clean and that he couldn't hear anything wrong. So I think at this stage I should show you the tracks in question, so I'd like to see if you can hear it too. I can hear clipping, or what some might call peaking, on the start of the guitar notes in the outro there. Here they are in isolation. And here's the source file before mastering. So I think you can hear a difference there. It's introduced popping and clipping. So here I've looped it next to the mastered version so you can hear the before and after. I hope you'll agree that there is a problem with the mastering there. It's introduced some clipping. But Jeff told me that he had double checked and that the tracks were clean. Well, obviously I wasn't going to pay all that money for something that I could hear as obviously clipping, so I asked if he could do anything about it. He agreed, and we eventually went with a Cedar plugin that did indeed remove the pops, at the expense of some volume. I said that I was perfectly happy with the main bulk of the song in question. It was only this outro that was clipping, so I asked if we could keep the main bit exactly as it was and only change the outro. That would be great. But when I heard it, the main bulk of the song was duller. When I queried it, he said yes it would be. I turned down the treble and the middle. And he also said that it was strange that I thought it was clipping because he hadn't even pushed it as much as some that he's done in the past, which of course makes me wonder why he didn't try to make my music as loud as he could. No matter, we ended up doing a sort of Frankenstein job and combining the good first half of one export with the good second half of the other. So at this point I need to do another comparison before we move on to the album's mix in general. I say this because usually I mix and master all of my music myself using Logic Pro for the mixing and LandR.com for the mastering. LandR stands for L&R, or left and right, and it's an online mastering service that checks your uploaded file against a whole bank of other tracks to decide how best to master it automatically. A few years ago, you could only choose a warm vintage sound, a crisp modern sound, or one setting in between, along with 3 levels of loudness. And that worked well enough for me, and it kept it nice and simple too, though in 2022, the service now includes a nice suite of tweakable parameters so that you can overcome booming bass or high sibilance on vocals. So let's hear how LandR did when I put the exact same section through it. It's clean. And to compare with Abbey Road's master, which Jeff said was clean, to my ears, LandR has avoided the clipping problem on its first attempt. I should point out that it's still possible for a signal to clip and distort without going over the 0 dB line. It depends on how it's been boosted in the mixing stage. There is only so much gain that can be added to any sound before it starts to distort, even if that distortion is then capped by a limiter later in the chain. So that might be what happened here. I did try and do some detective work, looking for the peaks in the original files, and I even sent an email to my mixing engineer to ask if perhaps we should just go back and adjust the mix. But he listened to the mastered versions, 2 of them, and he said that the Cedar plugin had fixed the master, so it was fine, so I didn't pursue the old version anymore. But even so, this LandR file was just one of 3 allowed tracks, each with 1 included set of revisions, made in a 30-day window for just £18. So if LandR has fixed this problem area, I think we should have a look at the 3 songs of different styles from the album and do a direct comparison with Abbey Road's mastering to see how LandR fares with different sounds. So let's listen now, though I'm not going to tell you which is which just yet. One mastering house will be A, and the other will always be B in the following examples. I will tell you which is which when you've heard them all, so which do you prefer, A or B? Here's an excerpt from World on Fire, which is a very loud rock song. And here's the second example, which is called Bridge of Glass, and we'll switch between them here as we go. Again, do you prefer A or B? And finally, an excerpt from the earlier part of Perfect Snow that we were hearing earlier. So again, which sounds best to you, A or B?
Look around, my love, the snow is falling and it lays on the ground without a sound. You're sleepy and it's warm in here and early, yes I know, but there's magic and I wanna show you. Hold on tight, my love, I'll be right next to you. I won't let you fall, won't let you fall.
So did you mainly prefer A or B? Well, A was Abbey Road and B was LandR. I've got to say, personally, I actually prefer B. I feel it sounds fuller, more dynamic and vibrant, as well as just a touch louder. And even if you do prefer Abbey Road, which still sounds very clear and lovely, I think you'll agree, I don't think it's over £1,000 worth of difference, unlike the mixing, which really was a massive step up from my original rough mix. So either way, I think that's a big win for LandR. And I say this as a paying customer. It was just over £1,500 of my own money that I spent on Abbey Road's mastering, and I feel that LandR would have easily done as convincing a job for about £54. There's one more thing to say about the mastering process, and that's that after all this, I noticed some mistakes in Abbey Road's metadata. Jeff had done all the various formats for me, but had misspelt a track name and used an ampersand in another track that shouldn't be there, so I'm sorry to say that they all needed to be exported again. I did feel really bad about this because at this point I felt like the process was dragging on and it wasn't the joyous experience it perhaps should have been for either me or him. But I couldn't have my song Kasumi come up as Katsumi when people play it. There was also even a final misunderstanding about Apple Digital Masters, which Jeff couldn't explain to me when I asked where the files were, as I'd paid extra for them. Turns out you just send Apple your main 24-bit masters, and you're paying that extra money for Apple to be able to converse with the mastering engineer in the unlikely event of an issue. It was only when another member of Abbey Road staff joined the email chain that this was explained to me, but by this point I was feeling a bit sad and was starting to doubt whether it was all worth the effort. Now, it's important to note that I only tried putting all of this through LandR for this video, as I thought it would be an interesting comparison. I didn't realise it would be quite so good. But I'm still glad that I went with mastering Abbey Road, as I say, at my own expense, as well as mixing it there, because regardless of how good the result is compared to what I could have done on my own, it does sound prestigious to say it. This is my album, The Prize That Never Came, mixed and mastered at Abbey Road Studios. I know I've got world-class audio on my album and nobody can throw shade on that. Abbey Road did a great job overall and I am very grateful to them. But it is a lot of money, and without the grants I got to go towards mixing on my self-employed budget, I think the mastering could have been done cheaper elsewhere without losing anything obvious besides the Apple Digital Masters. And I would definitely consider going with Paul Pritchard again if I wanted a big single mixed. Paul's mixes are superb. The price tag though is massive, even done remotely like this. I could have advertised my album even further with almost £1,500 more budget. So with these problems and the lack of any obvious superiority over the far cheaper alternative, I have to give Abbey Road Online Mastering a disappointing 2 stars out of 5. The end product sounds very nice and I'm proud to show people, but I didn't expect the clipping, the metadata errors, or the amount of time it took because it did drag on. And I could have avoided all of this at a fraction of the cost with certainly comparable, perhaps even better sound. Well, if you'd like to hear the whole album we've been talking about, which was all mixed and mastered at Abbey Road, yes, that does sound amazing, you can do so at justintowell.bandcamp.com, or you can search your preferred digital music service for The Prize That Never Came by Justin Towell. You can also buy a physical CD from Bandcamp for £8 plus postage, and this comes with a lyric book with artwork as well. Well, that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I do recommend going back and watching the mixing review if you haven't done so already, and please check out the rest of my channel for more music, video game videos and more. I'll catch you again soon. Take care until then. Cheers.